Welcome back to 3 Up, 3 Downs NL West Division Breakdowns. We're almost done with our division breakdowns for the 2023 season. We've got 2 teams left, and it's the Arizona Diamondbacks. What did the Diamondbacks do this offseason? They're building something, a little bit of a rebuild happening down in Arizona, but it's finally coming to fruition. First off, they are adding their number 1 organization prospect, Corbin Carroll, in left field. He will join the big club leading off. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. added via a trade with Toronto. Gabriel Moreno also added in that trade with Toronto, sending Dalton Varsho to the Toronto Blue Jays, as well as Evan Longoria and Kyle Lewis for bench roles. A very strong addition for the lineup. In terms of the rotation is about the same as it was last year with the addition of Ryan Nelson, their 6th organizational prospect, and the bullpen. The bullpen had the most overwork with the addition of Andrew Chafin, Miguel Castro, Scott McGuff, Cole Sausler via waivers, and Ryan Hendricks. Let's take a look at the lineup quickly before I send it over to Armdog. Lead off, like I said, the number 1 prospect, one of the number 1 prospects in the league, Corbin Carroll, a guy who is projected for 17 home runs, 20 stolen bases in his first year in the major leagues. So impressive stuff for a guy who has not cracked the major leagues until now, followed by Ketel Marte at second base, Jack McCarthy at right field, Christian Walker at first, Josh Rojas at third base, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. in the DH role, Alec Thompson, Alec Thomas, who tore it up for Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic in center, Nick Ahmed at short, and Gabriel Moreno, the former Toronto Blue Jays top prospect, cracks the lineup behind the plate for this Arizona Diamondbacks squad. Alex, what do you got on the D-backs?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the most excited I've been about the D-backs lineup in a while. It actually is pretty exciting. And there were some pieces last year. I mean, Ketel Marte had a bad year, but he's shown he can be a really good player. Christian Walker mashed the ball last year. I mean, he had like 30-something homers, and his advanced numbers said he was hitting the ball as hard as anyone. I love Lourdes Gurriel and Gabriel Moreno in this lineup. I know Varsho's a big loss, but they have, with McCarthy, Carroll, and Alec Thomas, and Josh Rojas, 4 quality lefty bats already.
Yep.
Which I think made Varsho a bit more expendable for them. And they go and get a top catching prospect in Lourdes Gurriel, right? Like, those are 2 guys that
Gabriel Moreno.
Yeah, but and they got Lourdes Gurriel.
Yep.
So those are 2 guys that make the lineup better. You know, I think their combined production is going to be a lot better than Dalton Varsho. And it's just 2 pieces there. Like, the lineup is more deep. I really like it. They're all young, too. I mean, I think Jake McCarthy's going to have a good year. Alec Thomas is going to have a good year. They'll be able to field well, and they can run. Corbin Carroll's going to be one of the fastest guys in baseball, if not the fastest. I mean, he's got wheels. Jake McCarthy's going to steal a lot of bases. I think it's hard to know how the rule changes are going to affect the style of play in MLB this year, but seemingly running and fielding are going to be impactful things. This team can do that a lot. And I don't know. I'm excited about it, and I think this could be a team to watch this year.
No, without a doubt. I mean, you look at obviously being in the NL West with the Dodgers, with the Padres, teams that loaded up with all-stars and superstars, and then you look at this Diamondbacks team. There's nothing. The pressure isn't as filled as those Dodgers, Padres teams because obviously they've spent the money that they have, and then you look at this young roster, and they're building something, and it's growing, and you're starting to see what it takes to build a young franchise that could be successful in this day and age of the Major League Baseball. But let's take a look at the bench before we toss it on over towards the pitching. They added, like we said, Evan Longoria, the former veteran of Tampa Bay for a long time, bounced around a little bit. I think he was in San Francisco last year. He'll be a third base, first base infielder for them off the bench. And then they added former top prospect, a guy who won the Rookie of the Year in Kyle Lewis in the outfield. What do you think of that bench and how they're able to plug and play?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Lewis is the story here. They bought low on him. I mean, the guy who won Rookie of the Year, then battled injury issues and seemingly couldn't find his groove again at the plate in Seattle. Seattle kind of moved on, obviously Julio, and they just aren't really in a position to bet on this guy, you know. But the Diamondbacks, a team that, you know, they're going to try to make the playoffs, but that's not. They don't have the loftiest of goals for this year. They can take a flyer on Kyle Lewis, who is still, I mean, he's 27. I thought he was going to be a bit younger than that. He's going to be 28 this year. But still, seemingly a lot of prime years in there. A guy who can run, a guy who can field, has power when he connects. I like the buy low there. Longoria, I think, is a bat that just makes pretty much any team better, but is often slept on because he's nowhere near to what he once was. And that's no discredit to him. He's 37 and still playing the majors, right?
Yep.
So I like this. I like this bench. I think it's good. Perdomo and Herrera is just a backup catcher. I don't think there's much there. Perdomo, I like having a switch hitting utility man, even though Leo Garcia kills me for the kill me for the White Sox. But I think it's just good utility. It can mix things up. But I really like this. I think it's good, and good to have two righty bats in a lineup that has a lot of lefties.
Oh, and it's fun. It's prospect watch. You're watching this team come up and be competitive, and I think the fact is we'll talk a little bit more in our predictions of where we find this team falling. But let's take a look at the rotation and the bullpen. The rotation is led off by Zach Gallen, the 13th ranked best pitcher last year, a guy who was very solid for this D-backs team, and he's projected about a 3.6 ERA for the year with about 191 strikeouts for about 180 innings, followed by Merrill Kelly, a guy who struggled mightily for the Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, followed by Madison Bumgarner. Shocked to hear he's only actually going to be 34 this year, seemingly with the success he's had in that very long career of his. 12 years at this point. Wow. Ryan Nielsen, like we talked about, a former top prospect for this organization. They're hoping his sixth best prospect in the organization will take the reins as that fourth overall starter for this team, followed by former Cub Zach Davies. What do you got on the rotation?
It's not a bright spot of this team. Zach Allen's good, and I think he is kind of a sneaky. I don't think he has the juice in him to do it, but he's a sneaky like Cy Young flyer, you can say, because he strikes out a lot of guys and has shown elite upside when healthy. I struggle to see him actually winning a Cy Young, But when he's on, you look at him and you're like, that's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. So he's a solid number one for this level of team, right? Probably a 2 or 3 on a contending team, but a very good pitcher, only 27. You look for, again, let's see a productive, healthy year from him. That would be great for this team's future. Merrill Kelly, yeah, he had a horrible World Baseball Classic, but still a quality pitcher. Bumgarner, I'm kind of intrigued. Yeah, he's not too old. Only going to be 34 this year.
That's a lot of innings on that arm.
It's a ton of innings.
12 years of a starter.
I know. It's a ton of innings, and the question is, really what he has to do right now is, can he redefine himself? Can he become, and I know this is kind of a weird comp, but, a Wade Miley, former Diamondback, Can he get a little more crafty? And he's that good of a pitcher, probably a Hall of Famer. That's a different debate, but that you could believe that he could rediscover something where he's throwing slower, but maybe a little bit more crafty, figuring it out. Ryan Nelson, a guy I don't know too much about. What I do know is he was always, or at least last year in MLB The Show, was one of those top prospect, future stars cards.
For any video gamers out there.
Yeah, so he's got a little hype on him, And I think anytime I'm watching a baseball team, I love when a young pitcher comes up because when they pitch, it's kind of like must-see TV, right? Even if you're out of the playoff hunt, you get to go watch Ryan Nelson pitch, see how he's developing. Zach Davies, I got nothing. The guy's bad. he's the guy. His whole role is just eat innings on bad teams.
Hop in the comments. I'm sure Rick will give all his insight that he's
Nobody
got
likes Zach Davies.
On Zach Davies from his time as a Cub. Let's take a look at the bullpen. I agree with the breakdown. I think you've got a solid 1 and a 3. We'll see what Merrill Kelly does. You're a little bit more sold on him than I am after that poor pitching result for his nation in the World Baseball Classic. But as I said, moving towards the bullpen, they did add. This was the biggest addition to this roster was the bullpen, and the fact is it's actually going to be a very good one with almost all of their relief pitchers being under about a projected under 4 ERA. This is something that's going to be more of a bright spot for this team. So when you have days where Zach Davies just goes about 3 innings for you, you can kind of toss it over to the bullpen. Who will be doing that? Kevin Ginkel in a closer by committee role with Andrew Chafin, Miguel Castro, and potentially Scott McGraw, followed by Joe Mantiply, thank you. Cole Sausler, Ryan Hendricks, and in the long-term relief role, their 5th overall ranked prospect, Dre Jameson, stepping into that long-term relief role. I think this is a guy that they were hoping potentially could be a future starter, and he still potentially could be, but with this being his first real season in the MLB, he'll be pitched in the relief long-term role. What do you got on the bullpen?
Yeah, it looks solid. Mantiply was an all-star last year, so, you look for him to have another good year. And then a lot of good, I like the Chafin and Miguel Castro signings. I think those are good, just quality. That's To me, why it's important is it makes this team a lot more sound. A team in this level, sometimes they just ignore the bullpen and let it be bad because they're like, oh, we don't need to invest in that yet. But there's a lot of value that comes in being able to be in games.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how excited we are about this lineup. Like, holding over those 2-run, like when you're down 2 runs and keeping it to 2 or 3 runs, right? Like, that can give you a lot of spark for the offense, too. It keeps you in games. So I think this is going to be a solid bullpen. It'll be interesting to see if anyone comes and snags that closer role out of this bunch.
Mm-hmm.
There's no obvious reliever to do that, but yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a pretty good bullpen, and you're looking for 2 things here. Like, one, are we going to be good enough to win some games? And that's probably number 1 priority, at least to start the year. But then also, everyone's looking for relievers at the deadline.
Yes.
And it's always good to have relievers break out because they're infinitely valuable. Every single year, they get overpaid for at the deadline. You could argue fairly paid for, but big hauls come, and this is a team that could be looking to do that if they're out of the playoff.
Well, and you've seen it. I mean, the Chicago Cubs, a team that kind of obviously won the World Series in 2016, kind of found themselves on tough years, and then they built that strong bullpen, sold it up, and now they're kind of seeing the results of what they were able to get in trade bait in that sense. And the fact is, when you don't have to necessarily trade people with the lineup, you just have to move the bullpen if they've played themselves out of a wild card spot, then that. It's honestly it's a huge momentum boost that you don't really have to screw with the roster. Just realistically, the bullpen, X factor for this team. Who are you picking?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to go with just like an overall vibe. Is this team's play style going to play well? You know, just slapping the ball around, running, stealing bases, all that stuff, which I think will, and I think that's something to watch for this season. But I think the real X factor, as I look at this roster, is going to be Christian Walker. He's going to be 32 this year. Hit a ton of homers last year. Fangraphs projects him for 28 this year. He's a guy who's really the only one that will sniff 30 homers on this team. I know Ketel Marte has done it in the past, but I don't think he's going to be coming close to that this year. He's going to be expected to carry the power load on this team, which is it's lacking. Like, if you look at a weakness in the lineup, there's not many home runs. Christian Walker can be that like kind of huge run producer in the middle of that lineup. And if he is, with Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Jake McCarthy all running in front of him, I think he could be in for a massive year. So I'm going to go with Christian Walker here.
I like the pick, and I'm going to steal your other pick. I'm going to take the vibes on this team. I need the vibes to be excellent. If they can find themselves in a competitive NL West fight, hanging on for a third place spot, who knows what's going to happen in that AL or the NL Central and the NL East. I do think there'll be 3 teams represented the NL from the East, but it could realistically only be 1 from the NL Central. That leaves spots up for grabs. We'll see what happens. So I'm picking the vibes. I need the vibes to be excellent. I need them to be a cool, calm, collected locker room that's just playing baseball, having fun, enjoying the game, and seeing where the results lead them. Predictions. Where do you like them?
I got him finishing third. in the West. I think this lineup's going to play. I just do. I think there's a lot of talent here and a lot of, like, I kind of call them like a young West Coast kind of Cleveland Guardians, if it goes right, you know. And obviously they don't have Jose Ramirez on this team.
No.
There's nobody like that on this team. But the idea that they could slap the ball around, run the bases well, field well, if they play at the top of their game, this lineup's going to be a pain. It's just going to be hard. It's going to be hard to deal with, and we'll see if that rotation can hold up enough. You know, keep the games close enough, because I think this lineup can score a lot of runs. So I got them finishing third and contending for a wild card. Hard to say they'll make it, but they'll be there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like I hinted, I think this is going to be a fun little race to track in the sense of that last wild card spot. Can the Diamondbacks finally take that step and be that team in that race? I think they could. Even if I do see this being a bounce back year for this Diamondbacks team, taking a huge step in the NL West, and I agree with you, finishing third. Definitely better than the Giants, and I think they'll be better than our last team on the night. But the fact is, if we missed anything, Diamondbacks fans, feel free to hop in the comments just directly below this video. If you feel like you've enjoyed our Star 6 Media content and our 3 Up, 3 Down divisional breakdowns, feel free to hit that subscribe button or the like button. We'd appreciate both. Otherwise, feel free to tune in for the remainder of our NL West breakdown. Alex, did I miss anything before we send her on over to the Colorado Rockies?
No, let's go Snakes, baby.
The Diamondbacks out.